What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Show, where I, Graham G. Matthews, break down all the original content I watch on the WWE Network and on Peacock. And today we're talking the September 11th, 2021 edition of Talking Smack. Now, we usually put up these reviews on Sundays, but because I broke down the Never Forget WWE Returns After 9/11 documentary yesterday, this is going up on Monday instead. But just be noted that the reviews usually go up on Sundays, so they're usually a lot quicker than this. But this was a pretty decent episode. They opened with a Never Forget graphic, as this did air on Saturday of 9/11, of course. I would implore everyone to check out that Never Forget, not even my review, I mean, check that out too, but I implore everyone to check out that Never Forget documentary that WWE did over the weekend. It went up on Friday. It's on their YouTube channel, social media channels, website, Peacock Network, etc., etc. Definitely make time for it. It's a great piece of business. So this week's episode was hosted not by Kevin Patrick and Matt Camp, or even Peter Rosenberg and Matt Camp. And I saw Peter Rosenberg actually during the SmackDown show at MSG. I was like feet away from him at the VIP reception on Friday night. But no, so they had Matt Camp and Sam Roberts making his Talking Smack debut. I don't know if they don't know who they want to host this show yet, or if Kevin Patrick or Rosenberg weren't available, or if they just like to switch people out to keep it fresh and interesting. I don't know. So Matt Camp goes from the analyst role to the host role on this episode, with Sam Roberts playing the analyst instead. They talk about the importance of MSG to WWE, how it's the most important arena to the company. They recap the opening segment of the show that saw Brock Lesnar interrupt Roman Reigns, such a hot opening segment, and attack the Usos, basically challenging Roman Reigns to a future Universal Championship matchup. Matt Camp brings up how Heyman knew that Lesnar was going to be there, and how Sam Roberts also acknowledges that, Heyman during his little shtick, during his little spiel, his usual spiel with Lesnar, he said that he was the advocate for nearly 20 years of Brock Lesnar. So the fact that he said was and not is very, very interesting and very much worth noting. Roberts says that Heyman, the only person that he's loyal to isn't Brock, isn't even Roman Reigns, it's himself, and he's always on the winner's side no matter what. He mentions the return of Demon Balor as well. They get back to that at the end of this episode before transitioning to the appearance from Trae Young, Atlanta Hawks star, on SmackDown this week, helping the babyfaces pick up the victory after some miscommunication with Sami Zayn, among other people. So the babyfaces went over there. We get Kayla Braxton interviewing Big E at the Garden, and Big E said it was beautiful for him to be back at MSG, such a glorious arena. And he calls Trae Young gifted, and that, he was one of those guys that you got to watch out for, because he may have bad taste in superstars, but he does call him a gifted athlete, though. And he says that he's always going to be there as Mr. Money in the Bank. He could cash in here, he could cash in there, he could cash in at any point. And he says that Brock Lesnar's hair is a choice, but a man of his wealth, of that level of wealth, can do really whatever the fuck he wants, and he's 100% correct on that. The fact that he criticized Brock Lesnar's hair of choice, it was choice of hair, whatever, was interesting. Hopefully it doesn't lead to Brock getting pissed and beating the fuck out of Big E. Hopefully Big E is smarter than that. But I thought that was interesting, though. And then Kayla says, well, thanks for the time. Go on and celebrate. And Big E's like, well, you can't tell me to celebrate. Like, I'll go celebrate when I want to celebrate, but I'll probably go celebrate anyway, which I thought was funny. They recap the Edge and Rollins rematch from SummerSlam on SmackDown this week. Sam Roberts brings up how Edge may have felt that he was indestructible coming off his win over Seth Rollins at SummerSlam. It didn't exactly go his way on Friday night. They recap Edge getting stretchered out of the arena. They replay Rollins' promo, which was tremendous. And Roberts says that he saw regret in Edge's eyes, that he even accepted the rematch in the first place. And it's one of those things where he brings up how, and I thought Roberts was a lot better than Rosenberg has been on these episodes, in my opinion. He brings up how with a guy like Edge, when he comes back, it's a legendary return, but we're kind of like wincing in every move that he takes, hoping he doesn't get hurt or re-injured again, like doesn't have to retire again type of thing. So he's 100% correct about that. Kayla goes back to the Garden. She's at the Garden going to interview Bianca Belair when she's interrupted by Carmella, who talks about how she's the most beautiful woman in WWE, blah, blah, blah. Liv Morgan interrupts her. Liv Morgan looks about as tall as Carmella. I don't know if she was wearing heels or if she's always been as tall as Carmella. I thought she was a lot shorter. But Liv says that she's concerned about Carmella. She's concerned about her and thinks that she lacks love in other areas. And Carmella kind of like scoffs at her and says, I'm confident. That's why I act the way that I do. It was just a weird interaction. I'm sure they were legitimately pissed on the inside. Carmella looked normal. Her whole bit here was weird. They were supposed to do, reportedly, a tag team match. Tony and Liv Morgan versus Carmella and Zelina Vega, which would play off of the interaction last week on the show here on Talking Smack, between Toni Storm and Zelina Vega. So it does look like we're getting that tag team match. It is a bummer. Listen, I'm not overly anticipating the match. I really don't care. But there's a lot of talented women in that match, and more importantly, Zelina Vega has a direct connection to 9/11. Her father was killed in the attacks 20 years ago. It was very important to her to compete in that arena. She was told she was going to compete in that arena. She was scheduled to compete on Friday night in that arena, and then they cut her match at the last second. So that really fucking sucks. And I don't really think there's any excuse for that. I think you could have found time or done it as a dark match or whatever. You had to have Charlotte and Rhea out there as a fucking dark match. I mean, why not do the tag team match as a dark match instead? I thought that was shitty. But anyway, Sam Roberts calls Carmella the spoiler of the SmackDown Women's Division. They also replay the contract signing between Bianca Belair and Becky Lynch on SmackDown, making the SmackDown Women's Championship match official for Extreme Rules between Bianca Belair and Becky Lynch. So Sam Roberts mentions that, Matt Camp brings up, is Becky any different than she was the last time that we saw her in WWE TV a year ago? And Roberts says that Lynch realized her value while she was gone, and that's why she's acting the way that she is. She also realized that she's one of WWE's biggest stars, and she can be as confident and as cocky as she wants to be. And in reference to what Becky said about Bianca on SmackDown, and Roberts does not have a great track record when it comes to Bianca Belair and WWE talk shows, kind of not burying her, but saying something dumb about her back in January of 2019 before a takeover, saying that she wasn't really worth the hype or whatever, which was fucking weird. Even if it wasn't character, it was just a dumb thing to say, because it wasn't true. I mean, she was undefeated up to that point. How the fuck is she not worth the hype? But anyway, Sam Roberts says that Bianca is not a flash in the pan, but at the same time, she hasn't done what Becky Lynch has done, which is a fact. So we hear from Bianca being interviewed by Kayla Braxton backstage at SmackDown, and Bianca says, listen, she wants to underestimate me and downplay my accomplishments, but the fact of the matter is, in my first Royal Rumble match, I won it. And in my first WrestleMania main event, I won it. And Becky, to be fair, I mean, she had her second Rumble and she won it, and she also won her first WrestleMania main event, but it's not the story they're telling, so I get it. But she says, come Extreme Rules, Becky Lynch can't run away anymore, which technically she can if they want to get her counted out and retain the title that way, but unless it's a steel cage match, but whatever. But Bianca said that she can't wait to be back in her hometown of Knoxville, Tennessee next week, which I guess is where they're going to be next Friday for SmackDown. Maybe Kane makes an appearance because he is the mayor of Knoxville, Tennessee after all. Who knows? So to close out the show here, Sam and Matt, they replay the return of Demon Balor on SmackDown and how amazing of a moment that was in person to experience. And Robert says that Balor becomes more dangerous when he's Demon Balor. And he realized that one man cannot beat an army of people, that being Roman Reigns and the Usos, but a demon might be able to. And that was what they closed the show with. So I thought this was a good episode of Talking Smack. The Liv Morgan and Carmella interaction was weird, probably setting the stage for a singles match, another one, or the tag team match that we were supposed to get on Friday night. At least they were on the show. I'm sure they weren't happy about that. I'm sure this was taped after SmackDown. But yeah, that was just weird. The Bianca interview was well done. We've heard from her a lot on Talking Smack lately, but she's great, so I'm not complaining. And Big E was fun, short, and sweet while he was on the show. So good stuff here. Sam Roberts, I personally prefer the duo of Matt Camp and Kevin Patrick in my opinion. But Roberts isn't bad. I thought he did a pretty good job here, to be honest with you. I mean, his work on these panel shows is kind of hit or miss, but I thought he did a good job on this episode of Talking Smack, and I would rather him be on it than Peter Rosenberg. Peter Rosenberg isn't terrible, but he just makes me roll my eyes every time he's on the show. So I personally prefer Sam Roberts. But check out the September 11, 2021 edition of Talking Smack right now on Peacock and the WWE Network. Be sure to like this video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. Have a great week, guys. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.